Okay.
So are we on 23 today?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Let's see if Gurudev. Ah, here we are. Okay. So let me pull up the blessings. Okay. Oops. I used to have them all together on one page, but then some of my things got erased. So, all right. Are we on Kishori Kunda also? Yes, YouTube. Okay. Well, Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. We'll be starting with Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 23. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta prayeshta badesu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati yutam ashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right. Before I begin to read, I would just like to point out for any of you who do not actually have the book in front of you, at this point we're in the center of the book where there are some wonderful pictures, starting with His Grace Srila Prabhupada. And a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as the Super Soul, resides within the body in the region of the heart. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of His smiling face indicate His extensive benedictions.
I love the pictures.
You can see them?
Yeah, I can see them.
You can see them online, or they're online also?
No, like whenever I read the book online, I don't see the pictures. That's one of the good things about having the book.
Right.
That you're able to see the pictures. And Prabhupada, he really wanted the artwork in his books. Actually, I read one conversation that he wanted each book to have 50 pictures.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, too bad that they're not also included online then. Following the process of mystic yoga, the meditative devotee pushes up his life air from the navel to the heart, then to the root of the palate, then to the space between the eyebrows, and finally out of the cerebral hole. Thus he gives up his material connection and goes back to Godhead.
Wow. And I think those are originals too.
They're wonderful. Yes, I. While Brahma sat in meditation, the sound of Krishna's flute entered his ear as the Vedic mantra Om. Thus Brahma attained complete Vedic knowledge and became the original spiritual master of all living entities. Lord Krishna's 10 most prominent pastime incarnations are, from the upper left-hand corner, Lord Matsya, the fish incarnation, Lord Kurma, the tortoise incarnation, Lord Varaha, the boar incarnation, Lord Narasimha Deva, the half-man, half-lion incarnation, Lord Vamana Deva, the dwarf Brahmana incarnation, Lord Parasurama, Lord Ramachandra, Lord Krishna himself, Lord Buddha, and Lord Kalki. I don't know if that you can see that clearly.
Yeah, those are all the different incarnations. The Dasha Avatar, I believe it's called.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful with Krishna in the center. It's quite beautiful. Quite beautiful. Let me see. We have like 3 more. When Narada Muni approached his father, Lord Brahma, and asked who the original creator of the universe is, Brahma replied that it is Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Oh, that's like the chapter we're reading now.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Lord Krishna exists eternally in his effulgent spiritual planet Goloka Vrindavana, where he enjoys himself with his ever-liberated associates. To create the material universes, he expands himself as four-armed Mahavishnu, who, lying within the causal ocean, produces numberless universes from the pores of his skin.
And I think we just read that verse last week.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful artwork here. And the last one here, as Lord Varaha, the boar incarnation, lifted the earth up from the depths of the Garbha ocean, the ferocious demon Hiranyasa attacked him. A great battle ensued. Maybe we're getting to that.
Yeah, that's
So,
third canto. We'll get there.
okay, so that's wonderful. Now we'll begin reading of the verse 23. Mahatastu vikurvanad raja satvo parbirmi hitat tama pradanasti tvi abhavad dravya janya kriyatmaka. The translation: material activities are caused by the Mahat Tattvas being agitated. At first, there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion. Later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. All right, so now we'll read the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Material creations of every description are more or less due to the development of the mode of passion, rajas. The Mahatattva is the principle of material creation, and when it is agitated by the will of the Supreme, at first the modes of passion and goodness are prominent, and afterwards the mode of passion, being generated in due course by material activities of different varieties, becomes prominent, and the living entities are thus involved more and more in ignorance. Brahma is the representation of the mode of passion, and Vishnu is the representation of the mode of goodness, while the mode of ignorance is represented by Lord Shiva, the father of material activities. Material nature is called the mother, and the initiator for materialistic life is the father, Lord Shiva. All material creation by the living entities is therefore initiated by the mode of passion. With the advancement of the duration of life in a particular millennium, the different modes act by gradual development. In the age of Kali, when the mode of passion is most prominent, Material activities of different varieties in the name of advancement of human civilization take place, and the living entities become more and more involved in forgetting their real identity, the spiritual nature. By a slight cultivation of the mode of goodness, a glimpse of spiritual nature is perceived, but due to the prominence of the mode of passion, the mode of goodness becomes adulterated. Therefore, one cannot transcend the limits of the material modes, and therefore realization of the Lord, who is always transcendental to the modes of material nature, becomes very difficult for the living entities, even though prominently situated in the mode of goodness through cultivation of the various methods. In other words, the gross matters are adhibutam, their maintenance is adidaivam, and the initiator of material activities is called adhyatman. In the material world, these three principles act as prominent features, namely as raw material, its regular supplies, and its use in different varieties of material creations for sense enjoyment by the bewildered entities. So I'll go back and reread the translation before we begin the discussion. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. At first, there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. All right, this is all very interesting. I find most interesting the way that Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva are seen as the representation. Brahma being the representation of the mode of passion, Vishnu the representation of the mode of goodness, and the mode of ignorance is represented by Lord Shiva, the father of material activities. This is very, very interesting. Also, the fact that in the age of Kali, the mode of passion is most prominent, and the material activities taking place help make us forget our original identity. And this, I guess, is the cause of all suffering. We forget that we are spiritual in nature, and we can become very attached to the material things, which is why we need to realize that that we must go beyond the material things. But it becomes very difficult because we're how would you say, trapped in these modes, and in order to get out, it is a very difficult process, which we try to realize through our reading, our studying, our connection to the devotees, and most especially to our spiritual master, who can help explain these details and explain to us how to break this attachment through the cultivation of various methods. And here it explains the methods basically very, very quickly, just an introduction to what these methods are. The gross matters, their maintenance, and the initiator of material activities, and these principles act as prominent features, like as a raw material. But we tend to use them, at the beginning for sense enjoyment, because we don't really understand how to get beyond the sense enjoyment. Even in the mode of goodness, as it's been pointed out, as Mother Lavanga pointed out a few weeks ago, it's the mode of goodness is a trap, because we feel like we are so good, so here we are in our ego, and we're enjoying life so much, and so that makes us more attached. So actually, once we get to the mode of goodness, we have a real chore in getting beyond even the mode of goodness in order to realize that everything is part of the material nature and the modes of material nature, and that we must get beyond it all in order to get back to Godhead and enter into our realization of our spiritual nature. So that's all I can say at this moment. I opening up the discussion now. Perhaps Mother Lavanga can go next.
I was thinking, about these modes, and the we tend to sometimes think of them separately, like, okay, I'm in the mode of goodness, I'm in the mode of passion, mode of ignorance, things like this. But actually, another part of being in this trap of the modes of material nature is, one, they're always fighting for, like, they don't they're always fighting for, like the Bhagavad Gita says, for the like over the living entity, like. And so this is why you see sometimes that you're in the mode of goodness, you're out in nature, everything's good, right? It's like, okay, I'm satisfied. I think we've all had this experience. You go up in the mountains somewhere, you're on a quiet beach somewhere, and you just feel completely, satisfied. I don't, need everything. Life is good, complacent, and then all of a sudden, what happens later? Your mind is thinking, okay, now I got to carry out this plan, and I got to achieve this, and I got to do that. You start getting into the mode of passion, and then after that, you're just like, man, I don't feel like doing anything. I'm not getting out of bed today. Nobody call me. So this is how the modes go. It's like they're fighting in this way. And so, even with as illuminating as the mode of goodness can be, or even as how good as passion can be in the very beginning, you can't really stay there. And then to add another layer to complicate this is that they can mix. So it's like Baskin Robbins, or as they have down in the Dominican Republic, helado bon. Like you people go and you mix the different ice cream, right? So in this way, you can mix the different modes. So you can have a little bit of goodness mixed with a little bit of ignorance, passion mixed with ignorance, and things like this. And so it further increases this trap that we can get in material nature, which is why the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita emphasize that there's no way you can really get out of it until you go beyond this material manifestation. And the easiest way to do that is by performing devotional service, as this verse talks about, the Supreme Personality of Godhead being beyond these modes. So everything that Krishna does is not because he gets in the mode of passion or ignorance. Krishna, or Vishnu, when he's sleeping, as he's doing when the universes are coming out of his pores, he's not sleeping because he falls under tamagun like we do. But this is more of just something he wants to do. In the same way, when he's engaging in activities, it's not because he's in the mode of passion. So in this way, if we ourselves are trying to go beyond the modes of material nature, you have to hold on to something that is not in the modes of material nature. Like if you can't swim, you have to have a lifeguard come save you, because the lifeguard knows how to swim. The lifeguard is not limited by the water. So this is why devotional services is emphasized to get us beyond these modes, because it's these modes that are causing us to suffer, because our original nature is that we are satisfied. We are satisfied serving Krishna. We're an eternal, blissful, living being. But it's these modes that make us think, okay, there's something wrong with me that needs to be fixed, or I need to accomplish this, I need to do that. They make us think I need to do something, or I need something other than devotional service to be happy in this world. And if you don't mind, Yamuna, I want to make a comment there, but if it's okay, I just also wanted to further expand into Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva being the controllers of these modes. And because one of the things that came up for me when you read that was something I heard in a lecture yesterday. And now, as you all probably know, I talked to Amy about this yesterday. Maybe Yamuna, you probably know too. We're in the month of Purushottama Mas. Very, very auspicious month. So I was listening to a lecture about how this month came about. And this was by Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj. He is a he's a senior disciple of Radhanath Swami. And he was explaining that in this world, we tend to impersonalize things. But actually, really, everything is personalized. So the planets have a personality behind them. And he was explaining how this month there's a personality behind it. So even we see with the modes, there are controllers. And so everything has something that's in control of it. And this is part of helping us increase this sense of personalism. Is that these modes, they're not just there, but there's controllers behind them as well. And that's let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I had for right now. Maybe Amy has something she would like to add.
No, I'm good with your beautiful both explanations and expansions, so I'm good with what you said.
How about Paola? Would you like to add something to this conversation?
She's shy. I told her she didn't have to talk if she didn't want
No, she
to.
doesn't have to, but it's we she must be invited.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In that case, Mataji Lavanga can go on and read text 24.
Okay, 24. Let's see here. Sohankara iti prokto vikurvan samabhutrida vaikarikastajasya tam shashyati ya tama shashyati ya vida dravya shakti kriya shaktir jnana shaktiriti prabhu. The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance in three divisions, namely the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Narda, you are quite competent to understand this. Materialistic ego, or the sense of identification with matter, is grossly self centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self centered egoism of the materialistic living entities is the cause of their being controlled by the other paraphernalia and continuing their bondage of material existence. In the Bhagavad Gita, this self centered egoism is very nicely explained in the 7th chapter, verses 24 through 27. The self centered impersonalist, without a clear conception of the personality of Godhead, concludes in his own way that the personality of Godhead takes a material shape from his original impersonal existence for a particular mission. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self centered impersonalist continues, even though he is seen to be very interested in the Vedic literatures, such as the Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. This knowledge of the personal feature of the Lord is due simply to ignorance of the mixture of different modes. The impersonalist thus cannot conceive of the Lord's eternal spiritual form of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non devotee, who, even after a thorough study of literature like the Bhagavad Gita, remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. This obstinacy is due to the action of Yoga Maya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aide de camp. Is that how you pronounce it? Aide de camp.
Yes, aide de camp.
Yeah, it's not something I see very often in books. So
You said it correctly though. It means like help on the field is what it means.
Amy, my English teacher, by covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist. Such a bewildered human being is described as mudha, or grossly ignorant, because he is unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable. If the Lord takes a form or material shape from his original personal feature, then it means that he is born and changeable from impersonal to personal. But he is not changeable, nor does he ever take a new birth like a conditioned soul. The conditioned soul may take a form birth after birth due to his conditional existence in matter, but the self-centered impersonalists, by their gross ignorance, accept the Lord as one of them because of self-centered egoism, even after so-called advancement of knowledge in the Vedanta. The Lord, being situated in the heart of every individual living entity, knows very well the tendency of such conditioned souls in terms of past, present, and future. But the bewildered conditioned soul can hardly know him in his eternal form. By the will of the Lord, therefore, the impersonalist, even after knowing Brahman and Paramatma features of the Lord, remains ignorant of his eternal personal feature as the ever existent Narayan, transcendental to all material creation. The cause of such gross ignorance is constant engagement by the materialistic men in the matter of artificially increasing material demands. To realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to purify the materialistic senses by devotional service. The modes of goodness are the Brahminical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures is helpful to such spiritual realization. And thus the Jnana Shakti stage of the conditioned soul is cooperatively better than the other two stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes, and the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, are all due to gross ignorance of spiritual life. In order to rectify this great anomaly of materialistic civilization based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, one has to adopt the process of devotional service of the Lord by adoption of the principles of Karma Yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 9:27 as follows: Yat karosi, yat anasi, yat jahosi dadasi yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurusva mad arpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering to me. All right, translation again. Let me get back up there. The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance in three divisions, namely the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Narde, you are quite competent to understand this. All right. Give me just 1 second. I need to get a drink of water after reading that. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing in this purport the personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what stuck out to me in that purport was really how, somebody can read books like the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras, but not actually really understand Krishna as he is. And this is because Krishna can't be understood by one's own intelligence. When Prabhupada came to America, somebody asked him, and I believe this is mentioned in the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, or it's mentioned somewhere where Prabhupada talks about his translation of Bhagavad Gita, that somebody told him, there are so many editions of the Bhagavad Gita, why write another one? And yes, there are many editions of Gita, but they don't present it as Krishna being a person. It can be translated in different ways, this Sanskrit. So really, the Supreme Personality of Godhead can't be accessed by our own intelligence. It has to be accessed, as Prabhupada was mentioning, through devotional service. And what we really mean by that is that you actually have to try to get to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have to try to develop this relationship, and you have to get the mercy. It's not just, okay, now I'm going to understand and know God by my own intelligence. And I remember at one time I kind of thought I could do this. I was going to understand God. I had written down that I wanted to know God. But really, to know God is that it's not just your own endeavor, but the mercy has to be there as well. Of course, the endeavor has to be there. The proper process has to be there. If if I want to get to know Amy, I actually have to have conversations with her, do stuff with her, know what she likes. Same thing with Yamuna. I've gotten to know Yamuna through doing this type of thing. But it's because we've had different conversations and things like that. So we've gotten to know each other, gotten to know each other in a way. So there's a process. So that's the same way with Krishna, and that's why Prabhupada ends with this verse from the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, do that as an offering to me. Because when you do that, then Krishna begins to reveal himself. Just like in the same way, when you do something nice for somebody, or when you offer somebody something, that might lead, that leads to a conversation, and then you two get to know each other a little more. So in the same way, when Krishna sees, okay, this person is not wanting to be the controller. They're not wanting to think of everything as theirs, of I, me, and mine. Okay, let me show you what's what. But if one is wanting or has a certain desire to do a particular thing, then Krishna, he's not going to interfere with that. As he is Paramatma, he is neutral. And this is also another thing. You'll see different camps of spiritualists. Some people are very much attached to this impersonal feature. So Krishna doesn't interfere with them. It's only when one actually has the desire to really go deeper that Krishna interferes. Krishna interferes when it's his bhakta. Other than that, he is neutral. So yeah, it's not something at the end of the day that we can force. And so that's why, as I'll conclude, like I had said before, that's why, it just can't necessarily be done by our own efforts. And even if we had these books, we have all these books of Prabhupada, but we're very fortunate that we have purports. Because if we didn't have the purports, how many of us would actually understand this chapter even? Like without explanations from Srila Prabhupada, it would probably just go. you know, or, like Sanskrit itself, when you try to study Sanskrit. And I think maybe Amy has had some experience with this because I know that you've studied Jyotish. So you've had to understand Sanskrit to a certain extent. And just my other friends who have become quite proficient in Sanskrit, there are so many different meanings for a word, and the grammar changes this and changes that. Sometimes people ask me, "Oh, how could you learn Spanish?" I'm like, "This is easy compared to Sanskrit because it's a lot closer to English compared to Sanskrit. The Sanskrit is on a much higher level, and so yeah. So by our own endeavor, it can't be done. We're conditioned by the modes, and then we'll see things according to what particular mode we're in. So without going on too much, I'll stop here. I think that made that kind of clear, and I'll open it up. I think if you have something you would like to add.
I don't really have anything more to add to that. You do a very good job of explaining, and Prabhupada has explained, and you have done a very good job of discussing that. So maybe Amy has something to add.
Hi. I just wanted to like yes, I wanted to kind of like say yes that the Sanskrit is a little bit, what's really hard for me is the Devangari. Is honestly that's the
Devanagari.
hardest for me. It's like when I look at it, it gives me a headache because I'm not like the symbols when they're written together, it's a lot harder than when they're separated by letter, that that you have to pronounce. That when you're learning Sanskrit, you pronounce each one of the letters of the alphabet, but when you see them written together, it's like, so it's to me it's impossible to understand. And I like the transliteration, so I'm like very very biased towards the transliterations. And I do know that the same word can mean many 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 different things. And I also am fascinated by the fact that when you stick all the words together, it makes a sentence. And that's really fascinating because you can't really breathe until you finish the sentence. So it's like sometimes it's just run on sentences together, like in Sanskrit. And I read somewhere actually that one should not study Sanskrit with the grammar because it takes away the like I don't know, it takes away the meaning of the of what the Sanskrit's trying to say. And maybe that's why Srila Prabhupada always put the synonyms like word for word, which is not the way you should learn other languages, because they put like the concepts for you to understand the word so that you would think in that original language when you so that you don't translate. But in Sanskrit, it's done on purpose so that we don't add grammar to it, because it somehow uh, how do I say that?
It takes away from it. It
It
can be
takes
like
away
a,
from it.
yeah,
Yeah, in Spanish it says the word is se desvirtúa. So I don't know how
yeah.
to say that, but it takes away from it. Yeah. And I was called my attention was called to this part here in the purport, which says the mode of goodness, or the Brahminical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures, is helpful to such spiritual realization, and thus the Jnana Shakti stage of the conditioned soul is comparatively better than the two other stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes, and the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, are all due to gross ignorance of spiritual life. In order to rectify this great anomaly of materialistic civilization based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, one has to adopt the process of devotional service of the Lord by adoption of the principles of Karma Yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So by offering everything to the Lord. So, um, yeah, it called my attention because in the Bhagavad Gita, before getting into the bhakti, he mentions the karma, the jnana, that those two, right? Karma and jnana
Karma,
yoga.
yeah, karma jnana.
Yeah. There's
Well,
another one. There's like Raja Yoga, but I don't know.
there's karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and then jnana yoga. The first 6 chapters, karma
Karma,
yoga,
but
then bhakti yoga, the next 6, and then the next 6 is jnana.
okay, okay. Yes, and it does call my attention because Krishna does go into each one by one, and then it's explained that the bhakti is the superior one.
Mm.
So I was just thinking because some people stay in the karma yoga or the jnana yoga, but it's not wrong because he says like everybody in the end it goes to him, but it's just that there are different stages and different processes, I guess, like at different stages of the journey of the soul. And then but though he does mention the bhakti yoga would be the superior one. And I love he mentions this at the end, 927 from the Bhagavad Gita, that everything that you do, all that you eat, all that you give away or you offer, as well as any austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto the Lord. That is beautiful because it's kind of like everything you should always think on the Lord, and every action, just by doing that, it's kind of like devotional service in itself, right? Like even
Yeah,
if you're working I'm working in a school as a school teacher, and I don't know, other people might be working in a company or something, it doesn't matter. But if you offer your work to the Lord and you do your work thinking always of the Lord, like I do that sometimes. I think that the Lord is my boss and that I want to please him, and that whatever I'm doing, I want the Lord to be pleased with my work more than the more than my real boss.
yeah.
Yeah. But I guess it works both ways, because if you please the Lord, all the bosses are pleased too.
Um, I will like to I'll comment on something here that you mentioned, because one of the things that's important to understand is that in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada fast tracks bhakti. You know, so like in chapter 3, we're just talking about, like, just do your work for Krishna, or in this verse, whatever you do, whatever you eat, do it as an offering to me. So Prabhupada is connecting everything to bhakti in Bhagavad Gita. But really, when we're doing a particular duty that we're attached to and we're offering that to Krishna, that's technically karma yoga, which is why Prabhupada calls it karma yoga at the end of this purport. Actual bhakti is, look, I'm not attached to any. I'm just attached to Krishna's happy. I don't care, whatever Krishna wants. It's kind of like, the gopi, that story where it's like Krishna has a headache and he wants the dust from the lotus feet of the gopis, and then they go to the gopis and they give their dust, and they said, weren't you worried? Like, you're giving your foot dust. When you go to hell, they're like, we don't care. Krishna has headed. That's like bhakti. But see, the thing is to do that pure stage. I mean, most people like can't jump to that. So it's like, okay, well, you have to start somewhere. Okay, you have some attachment to this world. Like, you're here. That's out of the question. There's no question of like attachment or detachment. So therefore, whatever you're attached to, then offer that result. And then by offering that result, one gradually makes advancement through the process. And then you ultimately get to the stage where it's just like, okay, I'll do anything, I'll do anything as service. It doesn't, as long as Krishna's happy, I'm happy. We all serve in a particular way. But in the beginning, it's very normal to have attachments. We have things that we like to eat, you know, and things that we like to do. Okay, so we offer that and we make advancement in that way. In the same way with jnana, like acquiring knowledge. There are people that, will go through that path. Maybe they're just more renounced. This is a little bit more rare to see in the West. And I think even kind of more rare to see in India as well, where it's like, like with the process of Sankhya, like examining all the material elements to find back the source. People might go through the process of trying to find the superior knowledge, okay? But but at the end result is that it should lead to the ultimate pure bhakti. So yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind. And one thing I learned when I took Bhakti Shastri is that they bring out, well, this is technically karma, and this is technically Satkam karma yoga, and this is what's technically bhakti. But we shouldn't just think that, okay, well, then I'm just gonna jump to just do bhakti and nothing else, because pure bhakti is like you can't do that on the conditions. You'll go right back into material life if you try to do that. Like I remember in the very beginning, I was like, okay, I'm giving up on my attachments, everything I like to do, and I'm just gonna do whatever service I'm asked to do, pure surrender. And then that worked for a while. And then I was like, oh, I really miss doing this thing, and I really miss doing that thing, and I really, and I realized that, oh, I still had these attachments. But I wasn't dovetailing them. I was like pushing them down and pretending like they weren't there. But things worked out much better for me when I started to think, okay, well, how can I dovetail this? And so, anyway, yeah, I think I'll sit there. Yeah, just the reason why I brought that up is because you had mentioned, bhakti and karma and jnana, and then like, and then so I thought, and then the Bhagavad Gita. So I thought, since Prabhupada brought up that verse and he referred to that verse as karma yoga, I thought I would explain that distinction and why
And
sometimes it can be confusing.
I'm very grateful you did that, because I was just gonna say that I'm right there where you where you just said that you were before, like that you already went through that part, because sometimes I think like, fine, I'll just drop everything and now I'm going to do this service, and I don't have much service right now. Uh but I mean, at some point service is gonna come. So I'm just like, the service I'm doing right now is not like my preferred service, but I'm doing it and I'm like, okay, yes, I'm doing it and service is good, but I also miss doing this and I also miss doing that. And I'm just exactly in the same place where you where you just said that you were at one point. So I can totally understand what you just said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. This it's better to dovetail your propensities under the guidance of senior devotees and guru, rather than just pretend like you don't want to do anything else. Because trust me, that won't work very long. You can only scrub toilets for so many months until you're like, all right. um,
Like that is not exactly what I wanted to do. That's not what I meant by service, but
I
like
don't know.
just
I'm talking.
no,
I'm
no, no,
talking.
just saying like going along with your analogy of the scrubbing the toilets. Um, but yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, you
But
wanna? Do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I just want to go back to the verse again and point out the very first part, which connects us with the other verse, of course, about the materialistic ego being a very self-centered thing, that we think we are so important and everything that we do is so important. Even when we're doing devotional service, sometimes we think, oh, the great importance of this devotional service that I'm doing, and we forget that the point is to leave our ego behind and to truly serve in the way that is most needed, according to what our talents are. Of course, we need to you know have the proper type of service for what it is that we can do, but we also have to be humble and stop thinking about how important we are and how important what we're doing is, and because this is what keeps us attached to material nature, and so we need to get beyond that. Yes. So that's really the only thing I wanted to add. It's just another observation over the first part of the purport. You know.
And that's like a nice add-on because like at the end of the day, whatever service we're doing, we're really fortunate to have that service. It's not that necessarily Krishna needs us to do that service. He can use anything in his service, but it's that we're getting the opportunity to serve in that way. Not that oh, we're so important and nobody else can do this but me. But so it's also like really important not to have that ego. So I appreciate that point that Yamuna had, and to be very humble with it, because it's like, no, Krishna can bring somebody else to do it, and so to have, but yet he's letting us have the benefit, and really that's true in whatever way we're serving, and at the same time, yeah, while it is true that for our main services, we need to be engaged in something that we like. Even Arjuna was engaged in something that was according to his propensities. But sometimes there are things that need to be done. And so it's also good to have that have that too. Like, okay, I'm doing this because it needs to be done, and not have this mentality of, oh, that's not my service. I'm not getting to do that. So there has to be, like both there at the same time. And yeah, no, and Amy, what you're doing is very nice. And Lord Chaitanya's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see that Lord Chaitanya's devotees, they had all sorts of different occupations. Ramananda Roy was a king, so, and all different sorts of things that they were doing, so um and a lot of them were grihastas, engaged in the world. And so it's Chaitanya Charitamrita is really good for showing one how to live in the world and be a devotee.
Well, this is a very interesting discussion, but we only have 5 minutes left, so I don't think we can continue with another verse. We'd barely get to read it before the time would be up. So I just want to make the announcement that the monthly questions and answers in English with Manunatha Maharaja will be next Tuesday, June 2nd. Okay?
Okay.
So, everybody's assignment is to make some questions and send in
Question.
questions, because we can't have the question and answer session without submitting questions. Although he has a a whole load of questions that were given to him before that he can always repeat or elaborate upon or whatever. But the whole point is seeing what it is that we are interested in, and asking the questions that we ask, that he will answer for us. And so it's helpful to send the questions in advance, although questions can be made during the class as well. Okay. So and
If
then in
we,
2 weeks we'll be back with Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, Amy.
oh, sorry, I just wanted to say if we ask the questions in advance, well,
This
because they could be answered also in the chat maybe,
No,
or
you said this is a question for next
for the
week's
Srimad Bhagavatam class. Okay.
no, for the questions and answers in English class next week. Just tell him, because I know he's constantly answering your questions, and if you could sometimes save some questions for this particular for this particular event, that might be nice as well. But I know a person like you is probably asking many questions all of the time, and he is so happy always happy to respond, even if it's the same question he's heard before so many times and time again. He's never tires of answering them again and finding maybe perhaps a new way to explain the same thing over and over again. It's never a bother for him. This is what he likes to do the most, and so this is how we engage him in these sessions because
Yeah, I know that that's the idea so that we can become better devotees and we can learn or better disciples, not devotees, we're aspiring devotees, but I understand the point of the questions is for us to learn and for us to know how to be better. And if we're not asking questions, sometimes it's just that we're like busy because I have like been with final exams in my school and it's crazy. It's like the last 3 months of school year is so exhausting and stressing. But I do have questions. I have them in there somewhere in my head and I will make a point of writing them down.
yes.
I,
Well,
I I'm glad you mentioned this, Kimuna, because I was thinking yesterday. I was like, I need to ask Maharaj to talk about Purushottam Mass during the next, because it only comes once every like 2.5 to 3 years. So
yes,
anyway.
he spoke about it a bit in Spanish here at Govinda's Veggie Garden a couple of weeks ago, but he would be quite happy to speak about it some more in English for our class next week.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, because I have people that I can share it with that don't speak Spanish. So
Yes, very good. And remember that there are online services that can be done for Guru Maharaja as well, besides the service that one does in their temple. If you are, interested in helping with the online services, just ask him. And
I
so
thought that it would be great if he let me know that he wanted me to do some service and not me like ask him directly because maybe
mm,
that would be like kind
it
of
all has to do
poaching for a
with your
service.
interest. It has to do with your interest. You must
Oh,
offer
one
to
okay.
do
has to
service.
inquire. One has to inquire.
Yes, exactly. And then, then he will respond with what it is that he needs. He needs help. It's not just, that Yamuna Devi Dasi should do all the online services. So
No,
there are
sometimes Yamuna might need a break too.
yes, exactly. And there are book translations that can be worked on. There are articles that can be made from the books. There are posts that can be put. I don't have to put all the posts in English and Spanish. There are several services that are available for an interested disciple. So feel free to ask about that. All right?
Thank you, Yamuna. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
All
Yes.
right.
Well, Manunatha Maharaja ki jai,
Jai,
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
jai.
See you
Thank you
guys
all
next week.
for attending. See you next time.
See you next week.
Bye.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare
See you,
Krishna.
Paula. Haribo.